Hello again, everyone. This is Dr. Ron Cravey. I would like to welcome you to Part 5 of the Local Evaluation Training for Iowa 21st Century Programs. Part 5, we're going to talk about local objectives. So let's go look at the local evaluation form. You remember in the last video we discussed the official objectives according to the US DOE, and that's your GPRA measures data. In this, if you'll remember, we totaled up the total number of regular students needing improvement in several areas and figured percentages. But to have a successful program, you also need local objectives because that allows you to focus on your local needs. So in our local objectives, you will notice here in the required elements table that we're going to fill out some data tables. We're going to rate each of our objectives. We're going to explain the methodology we use to measure the objectives and how we justified the rating, and then we're going to discuss the objectives in a little more detail. Now, unlike the GPRA measures, there is a separate table for each of your 5 cohorts, so you don't have to combine those. Although if they have the exact same objectives, you could, as long as you explained in the discussion section how you did that. So in each table, you're going to list the objective. You're going to rate it. How do you rate it? For each one, you're going to rate it in one of 4 ways. You either met the stated objective, you did not meet but made progress toward the stated objective, you didn't meet the objective and you made no progress toward it, or you were unable to measure the stated objective. For each of these, you must provide the methodology and the justification for how you met the objective. This is especially important when you're talking, say you did not meet it. And if you say you're unable to measure it, if you're going to make an objective, you should be able to measure it. And if you can't, you're going to have to explain the extraordinary circumstances that prevented you from measuring that. And you would do that in this column, methodology justification for rating. Now, if you're going to have to do these ratings and provide the methodology justification, it's easy, really, if your objectives are what we call SMART objectives. In case you don't know what SMART means, let's take a look at that. SMART objectives are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they're timely. So let's look at an example of a SMART objective. Here's an example of a SMART objective. At least 60% of regular attendees of the 21st Century Program will receive C's or better in science on the last report card of the current school year, whatever it is, or actually for 21st Century, it's the school year before. Okay, we can see it's specific. We're talking about regular attendees of the 21st Century Program. It's measurable because we're going to look at science on the last report card of the year. It's achievable. That would depend on, in this particular district, they felt 60% was achievable. Perhaps only 50% of the students before were making C's, or 40%. You need to make yours achievable. Not easy, but achievable. And that's also for realistic. It's pretty realistic. It's easy to look at report cards. It's easy to figure out 60%. And it's timely because it's talking about this particular school year, which would be the school year before. So let's see what happens if we were going to use this objective. I'm going to cheat and do a copy and a paste so I don't have to type it in. We'll go over here to our cohort table and we'll paste in this objective. So let's pretend that we did this objective and we met this objective. Do it here. What would we put over here in methodology justification? In methodology, we would explain that we gathered up the report cards of all the students in our program. We've counted up how many of them made C's or better. That would be C's, B's, or A's. And then we figured a percentage to see if it was 60%. We did a calculation. The justification for the rating, since you met the stated objective, it would be very simple. Since 72% of the regular attendees received C's and 60% was our benchmark, we met the stated objective. What if you did not meet but made progress toward the stated objective? Let's take a look at what that would look like. In this one, the methodology is the same. We're going to gather report cards, we're going to count C's, but let's say this time only 52% made. You need to justify the rating by stating it was determined that if at least so much percentage received C's, we were making progress. That percentage may have been 50%, could have been 45%, 55%, whatever it is, you need to state it so when someone reads this local evaluation, they understand how you determined that rating. Now, let's say that not only did not meet, but you made no progress. Methodology is the same. What would the justification be? Perhaps you were trying to have your students, maybe only 40% were making C's the year before, and only 38% made it this year, or 40%, whatever your justification was to say, we missed the ball on that one, we did not make progress. Later, you would want to explain that. We'll talk about that in video 6, and how well you were doing and how you were going to change that or work on that to fix that. And let's talk about unable to meet the objective. So what would we put in the methodology justification for that rating? Well, the methodology is the same. What's our justification? In this one, you're going to have to say why you couldn't gather up those report cards. We had a massive data breach. Someone came in, destroyed all the records. We're currently in the progress of reconstructing those. That would be an extraordinary circumstance. A hurricane came through and wiped out. That'd be tough in Iowa, but maybe a tornado came and wiped out the school district, all the servers, all the computers that had the data on it. And all the teachers are gone for vacation, so you're going to have to gather that up. Whatever those extraordinary circumstances were, you have to provide that. So this gives you an idea of what to do if you have a nice, smart objective. But what if you don't? Obviously, you're doing your local evaluation already. It's too late to write smart objectives. You already have them. We could do a whole video series on writing objectives, and that's not our goal here. So let's take a look. What would we do? Well, what we want to focus on is measurable. This is something that's important. If you can't measure it, there's an old saying in statistics, if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. So you need to measure it. So let's take an example of a non-SMART objective. Students will improve in science. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's see what we would do with that one. We're going to go here. We're going to add that as the second objective just to fill up the deal. Gee, what's our objective rating? Well, if you're going to say you met the stated objective, you're going to have to explain your methodology justification. Basically, you're going to do the same thing you did above, but you're going to have to do more explanation since you didn't put in your objective. You did not make that objective specific, realistic, timely. You're going to explain that. Basically, in your justification, you're going to explain that. So that's how you would overcome the fact it's not a SMART objective. It means more writing on your part. It is, let me make a quick statement, it's bad form, as the British would say, to make up your methodology and justification at this point in time. Hopefully you had already decided ahead of time what these things would be. And then for this same objective, you would do the same thing on the other ratings, whatever the rating was. You have to explain how you measured it and what the justification was. So you can tweak that as a deal. So that's what you do on filling out these tables. It's very important. And as I stated earlier, in the video 6, we'll explain what to do to change your objectives for the next year so they will be measurable. All right, let's take a look at our discussion section for local objectives. Now here's where you're going to expand on your objectives. Statistical analysis is important for some objectives that use a lot of numbers, and that explains whether or not there was a statistical improvement or not. And any evaluator should be able to handle doing statistical analysis. Some things you might want to point out is perhaps you are measuring improvement over more than 1 year. A longitudinal study. You should talk about that in the discussion. That's important. That's going above and beyond what the USDOE is expecting. Here's your chance to put in any graphs, tables, and charts to make things easier to understand. If you have more details on methodology and ratings than you put in the table, certainly feel free to put those in the discussion section. You need to clarify why you did not meet objectives. Especially if something happened in the middle of the year that caused a problem with the particular item. And you also need to clarify why you didn't get some things measured. You know, we missed the boat on the planning. I wouldn't state it that way. You want to state that there was a lapse. Perhaps you had a change of personnel in the middle of the year, and that kind of messed things up when you had the changing of the guard. Those are the things you would look at. So in this video, we've looked at your local objectives and whether or not they're measurable. And hopefully this video will help you do that. As you can remember, we had a SMART objective, a non-SMART objective. And of course, as always, if you have any questions about this section, this video, or anything else to do with the state evaluation or your local program, contact one of us, one of the people in this list, and we'll be happy to assist you. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for all you do.